Good afternoon. I call to order this meeting of the Housing Policy and Development Committee. This is our regularly scheduled meeting of July 25th. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee, and I'm joined today by Vice Chair Jeremiah Ellison, also Lisa Goodman, Lisa Bender, and Jeremy Schrader. We're a quorum of the committee, so we can conduct our business. We have a number of public hearings today having to do with land sales. In fact, we have, I think, 8. And then we also have some discussion items, 3 of those. I'm going to move the consent agenda before we go into the public hearings. And any committee member can pull these items off or one of these items off if they like. First consent item is number 10 on the agenda, and that is approving the reallocation of $25,677 in our 2017 Emergency Solutions Grant Funds for First Covenant Church. Next consent item is authorizing staff to continue the analysis authorization for the West Broadway Curve West Building Affordable Housing Project. The next consent item, number 12 on the agenda, is extending exclusive development rights for Pinnacle Management. And this has to do with parcels at 1830 and 1832 Bryant Avenue North, also on West Broadway. And the final consent item is a resolution approving the Hennepin County Housing and Redevelopment Authority financial assistance, the 2018 Affordable Housing Incentive Fund projects. And they're all listed on the agenda. Would any committee member like to pull anything off for further discussion? Seeing none, then I will move the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those carry. Now we'll move back to our public hearings on our land sales. The first one is a land sale at 5960 Clinton Avenue. And I think we may be able to have a presentation about these in a group. And I think that we're going to have Mr. Ramadan do the presentation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ramadan actually is not in today, so I will be presenting on his behalf. Roxanne Young Kimball.
Wonderful. Well, go ahead. Thank you.
5960 Clinton Avenue South is a sale through Minneapolis Homes. Policies for the program were established by the City Council on December 11th, 2015, and on February 10th, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 5960 Clinton Avenue South to Wilson Molina for its appraised value of $45,000, subject to conditions. If Wilson Molina fails to close, we recommend approval of sale to Jenny Investments, LLC for the appraised value of $45,000, subject to conditions. 5960 Clinton Avenue South was acquired on July 12, 2017 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited land for $30,000. Staff marketed this property with an open house held in March 2018 and with notification sent to a listserv of over 2,300 people. There were 9 applications that were received for this property. The property was constructed in 1914 as a 598 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home. The purchaser intends to demolish 5960 Clinton Avenue South and construct a new 4-bedroom, 4-bath, single-family home to be marketed without restrictions. The alternate purchaser plans to also demolish 5960 Clinton Avenue South and construct a new 3-bedroom, 3-bath, single-family home. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates submitted by the applicant and confirmed they are sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the program. Notification was provided to the Hale Page Diamond Lake Neighborhood Association on April 5th, 2018. Staff recommends Wilson Molina as the purchaser and Jenny Investments as the alternate purchaser, since they are the highest and second highest ranked applicants, respectively. The purchaser, Wilson Molina, is here today and is available to speak during the public hearing. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions.
Oh,
So
do you want me to keep going and do all of them? Sorry.
Well, I think, why don't we go ahead and open the public hearing for this one, and we'll come back one at a time.
Okay.
So I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? This is the sale of the property at 5960 Clinton Avenue. Seeing nobody stepping up, then I'll close the public hearing, and I will move approval of the land sale. All those, any discussion on this? And welcome, Councilmember Reich. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. That motion carries. So let's go on to the second one, which is 3718 Fremont Avenue North.
3718 Fremont Avenue North is similarly a sale through the Minneapolis Homes program. Policies for the program were established by the City Council on December 11, 2015, and revised on February 10th, 2017. Staff recommends sale of 3534 Fremont Avenue North to JC Investments, Inc. for its appraised value of $5,000, subject to conditions. Staff marketed and reviewed 3 applications received in accordance with the Minneapolis Homes Program Manual. Wilson Molina withdrew his application, and CTW Group was not recommended because the neighborhood preferred owner occupancy. This property was acquired on April 14, 2016 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited land for $5,000. The building was constructed in 1907 and is a 1,210 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home. The applicant intends to rehabilitate the home as a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family home to be sold to owner occupants. The applicant proposes to invest $112,700 to rehabilitate the property. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates submitted by the applicant and confirmed that they're sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the Minneapolis Homes program. 2 open houses were held for the property in December 2016, and notification was sent to a listserv of over 2,300. Notification was provided to the Jordan Area Community Council, and they did not provide comment. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. So why don't we open the public hearing for this one. I do have 3 people who signed up to speak at the public hearing, so I'm not going to call your names because hopefully you'll know when your property comes up and you want to speak. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on 3718 Fremont Avenue North? Seeing no one stepping forward, then I'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions from committee members? Seeing none, then I'll move approval of the land sale. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. That motion carries. Now we'll move on to 2916 14th Avenue North.
Chair Gordon, this is a sale through the Minneapolis Homes program. Policies were established by the council on December 11, 2015 and on February 10, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 2916 14th Avenue North to Shalonda and Compton Alves for its appraised value of $65,000, subject to conditions. If Shalonda and Compton fail to close, approve the sale to Harvest Management Group, LLC for the appraised value of $65,000, subject to conditions. This property was acquired on October 20th, 2017 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited land for $60,000. Staff marketed the property with an open house held in March 2018. There were 12 applications received. The property was constructed in 1928 as a 1,848 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home. The purchaser intends to rehabilitate the property as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home to live in as owner-occupants. The alternate purchaser intends to rehab the property as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home to be sold to a pre-approved buyer who will live in the property as an owner-occupant. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates submitted by the applicant and confirmed they are sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the program. Notification was provided to the Northside Residents Redevelopment Council on April 5, 2018. They recommended Shalonda and Compton Alves as the purchasers and Harvest Management Group, LLC as the alternate. The purchasers are here today and available to speak during the public hearing. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. So I'll open the public hearing, and would you like to come up and speak and just introduce yourselves?
My name is Compton Alves, owner of Aspect Construction. We intend to live in this property. We do not have any minors, and just me and my wife, so a 2-bedroom would be appropriate. And I intend to reconstruct the entire interior of the house and make it livable, basement, and fence the yard in, and do all the necessary rehabilitation that we have to. I hope that you guys will consider me and let me have this project for my family. We don't have any siblings around. Everybody's grown and gone, so it's just us. and a 2-bedroom is appropriate, because if you put 3 or 4, then they would be coming back. And we don't need them to come back now. So I wish that you guys can give me the opportunity to have this property and make it our home. Thank you.
Wonderful. Glad we're able to be part of it. Any questions or comments? I guess I better make sure there's no more comments at the public hearing. Seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing. Any committee members have any questions? I will see none. I will move approval then. The land sale, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. And that will bring us, that passes. So that brings us to the next land sale, which is 3210 Upton Avenue North to Northside Home.
Chair Gordon, this is sale through Minneapolis Homes, policies for the program established by the City Council on December 11, 2015 and on February 10, 2017. We recommend the sale of 3210 Upton Avenue North to Northside Home LLC for its appraised value of $60,000, subject to conditions. This property was acquired on May 19, 2016 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited property for $10,000. Staff marketed the property with an open house held in March 2018 and a notification to a listserv of over 2,300. There were 3 applications that were received. CTW Group was the other applicant besides the purchaser and the alternate. Northside Homes LLC and Wilson Molina were the first and second ranked proposals and are recommended as the purchaser and alternate purchaser respectively. The property was constructed in 1926 as a 1,643 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home. The purchaser intends to rehabilitate 3210 Upton Avenue North as a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home to market exclusively to owner occupants. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates submitted by the applicant and confirmed they are sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the program. Notification was provided to the Cleveland neighborhood on April 5th, 2018, and they recommended sale to Northside Homes LLC. Are there any questions today?
I don't see any questions. Thank you so much. So I'll open the public hearing then on the land sale of 3210 Upton Avenue North to Northside Homes. Anybody here want to comment on that? Seeing no one stepping forward, then I'll close the public hearing. No? Okay. Seeing no questions, I'll then move the sale of 3210 Upton Avenue North to Northside Homes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. That will bring us to our 5th land sale. This is 415 22nd Avenue North.
Chair Gordon, members of the committee, this is sale through Minneapolis Homes. Policies for the program were established by the City Council on December 11, 2015 and on February 10, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 415 22nd Avenue North to Pointers Enterprise LLC for its appraised value of $42,500, subject to conditions. If Pointers Enterprise LLC fails to close, approve the sale to Taihan LLC for its appraised value of $42,500, subject to conditions. 415 22nd Avenue North was acquired on October 20th, 2017 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited property for $42,500. Staff marketed the property with an open house held in March 2018 and notification to a listserv of 2,300. There were 5 applications received. The property was constructed in 1916 as a 1,567 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family home. The purchaser intends to rehabilitate the property as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home to be marketed exclusively to owner occupants. The alternate purchaser intends to rehab the property as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home to be marketed exclusively to owner occupants. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates submitted by the applicant and confirmed they are sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the program. Notification was provided to the Hawthorne neighborhood on April 5th, 2018. They recommended another applicant that did not have sufficient financing. Staff recommends Pointers Enterprise LLC is the purchaser and Taihan LLC is the alternate purchaser, since they are the highest and second highest ranked applications respectively. The purchaser, Dr. Russell Pointer, is here today. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. We'll open the public hearing. And would somebody from Pointer like to get up and speak? Okay. You don't necessarily have to, but we'd be happy to hear what your plans are for the building. Yes, she did.
No, we're going to get it, just fix it up, and then and get an owner occupancy to fulfill it. So that's it. It's our
Wonderful.
first project, so thank you.
It's your first project?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, good
We're
luck.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully it's the first of more. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Seeing no one step forward, then I'll close the public hearing. And seeing no comments or questions from committee members, then I will move approval of the land sale as staff has recommended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And now we're up to number 6 of 8. This is the land sale at 756 Jackson Street Northeast to Blue Gold's Ventures.
Chair Gordon, members of the committee, thank you very much. I'm before you this afternoon with a report recommending the sale of city-owned land located at 756 Jackson Street Northeast. The lot is located in the St. Anthony East neighborhood in Ward 3, contains approximately 5,180 square feet and is zoned R1A. The site is currently occupied by a public alley, which will be vacated in order to accommodate the redevelopment activity. The developer understands and has already agreed to construct a new public alley and provide the necessary easements as part of the overall redevelopment activity. The city-owned property would be combined with the adjacent parcels owned by the developer at 750 and 754 Jackson Street Northeast, and combined then the site would total just under 13,000 square feet. The developer, Blue Gold's Ventures LLC, submitted an offer to purchase for the subject property earlier this spring, offering the full reuse value of $20,720. Blue Gold's Ventures is proposing to construct a 4-story, 16-unit mixed-income rental project that will include 4 live-work units on the first level. The development will also include a rooftop patio, bicycle parking and storage, and 5 spaces of surface parking for the residents. The units will be a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, and the developer will also be constructing a new public alley on the south end of the project site. The project is in compliance with city policy and includes 20% of the total units affordable at or below 60% AMI. CPED staff evaluated the offer, the redevelopment plan, and the developer's credentials. The development costs are estimated at about $2.9 million, and the project is 100% privately financed. We are recommending approval of the sale of 756 Jackson Street Northeast to Blue Gold's Ventures LLC for $20,720.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. I'll open the public hearing. Is anybody here to speak on this matter? Anybody from DJR? Seeing no one then. This is a bigger project than some of the other ones. I don't see any questions or comments from committee members then. So I'll close the public hearing and I'll move this forward as recommended by staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. That motion carries. Now we'll move on to the other next land sale at 514 20th Avenue South. Welcome.
Thank you. This public hearing was scheduled to consider the sale of an approximately 17 by 41 foot side yard owned by the city as a portion of 514 20th Avenue South in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood of Ward 6. The city received an offer to purchase from Jennifer Devaney, an adjacent property owner, on June 14th for $1,000. An appraised value of same amount was established on May 11th in an appraisal ordered by the city. And on May 10th, the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole found the proposed side yard sale to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Are you also doing the next one as well?
Yeah, do you need to open this for public comment?
How about if you tell us about the next one and then I'll open them both at the same time.
Deal. The second public hearing was scheduled to consider a similar side yard sale of an approximately 15 by 75 foot side yard owned by the city as a portion of 2622 A Street South in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood of Ward 2. The city received an offer of purchase from Matthew Schrader, an adjacent property owner, on June 8th for $1,575. An appraised value of same amount was established on May 11th in an appraisal ordered by the city, And on May 10th, the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole found that this proposed side yard sale was consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Do we have any questions on that side yard sale?
Nope, I don't see any questions on that. I appreciate seeing both of these coming forward. I think they've been a long time in coming.
I think so.
And I'm going to open the public hearing then on both of these land sales with the side yards. See if there's anybody here to speak on the 514 20th Avenue South side yard sale, or on the 2622 8th Street South sale. Seeing nobody step forward, then I'll close the public hearing, and I will move both of those forward for approval. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And I think we have one more hearing before us. And this has to do with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund loan and new ground lease for Riverside Homes Affordable Housing Project. And is that your report as well?
Correct.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, members of the committee. This public hearing was scheduled to consider the city's issuance of a new 75-year ground lease with Riverside Homes 2 of Minneapolis Limited Partnership in support of the acquisition and long-term preservation of an existing 191-unit affordable housing project known as Riverside Homes. The project is comprised by 74 scattered site properties located in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood of Wards 2 and 6. The project's underlying land is owned by the City of Minneapolis and is subject to an existing ground lease with the current owner. Housing Revenue Bond financing, approved by City Council in December of 2017, requires a new lease with Riverside Homes 2 of Minneapolis to proceed with the project. In December 2017, City Council authorized staff to negotiate with Riverside Homes 2 of Minneapolis on a new 75-year lease. The proposed terms of this new lease will impose affordability restrictions in conformance with the city's current uniform housing policy. The new lease and affordability restrictions will be in place through December 31st, 2093. In support of the long-term affordability of the project and to maximize current and future loan repayments on the city's subordinate loan, no payment will be required as part of the terms of the new ground lease. In addition to the new ground lease, this report also seeks final council approval authorizing the appropriation of up to $5,272,000 in loan repayments the city will receive from the current owner. The loans to be repaid were originated in the 1980s as either HODAG or Cedar Riverside Urban Renewal Program loans. The current owner assumed these debts when it acquired the buildings in 1999. This appropriation is intended to facilitate future locally sourced affordable housing investments through the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The city will also authorize a new CDBG-funded Affordable Housing Trust Fund loan in an amount not to exceed $5,112,131 to Riverside Homes 2 of Minneapolis Limited Partnership for the acquisition and long-term preservation of the Riverside Homes Affordable Housing Project. This new CDBG loan will have an interest rate of either 1% or the applicable federal rate, which is currently 2.95%, with a 40-year term maturing on or before December 31st, 2058. The new city loan will include cash flow repayment provisions of 40% of surplus cash payable annually to the city. The repayment appropriation and issuance of this new CDBG loan were conditionally approved by the City Council in December of 2017. The current and new owner will have achieved all of the objectives contemplated by the city and be ready to proceed with this transaction prior to December 14th, 2018, at which time the housing revenue bond commitment would expire. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for the good report. And we'll open the public hearing then on this matter. Would somebody like to come and speak briefly to it? No, I think that's fine. I'll just note that this has been a long time coming, as we heard in the report. I guess I'll close the public hearing, and make a note. We talked about this last year and did some of the preliminary approvals. This is a pretty unique situation where the city owns the land. And the action we're taking now, I think, is a big step towards preserving affordable housing that we have and making sure that it's around for a long time. It's a little bit like a community land trust, or it's almost like the city holds the land, and so it's the city land trust with this lease agreement. And this will allow the homes to be improved so that they can be quality, stable, affordable housing for many years to come. So I appreciate that. And with that note, I will move approval of this item then, which is it's doing a few different actions. It's passing the resolution to approve the appropriation of $5.2 million in loan repayments, also authorizing the new 75-year ground lease, authorizing approval of a new CDBG funded Affordable Housing Trust Fund loan, and authorizing execution of all the agreements and documents associated with those items. Any questions on that? Seeing none then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. So now we're moving on to our discussion items. The first item is a contract with our Minnesota Legal Aid for legal representation to low-income Minneapolis tenants. Thought this would be something that we might want to get a little report on and hear a little bit about the good work that's been done and what's coming up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Committee Chair Gordon and Council members. I'm Naran C. Hwang from CPED Contract Administrator. So we're asking authorization to enter into a contract with Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid for $150,000 per year, and also extensions for additional 4 years at that same amount pending council approval of the budget and performance to the satisfaction of our department. We released an RFP for the tenant legal services to help to represent low-income Minneapolis renters to ask landlords to make repairs to the rental properties. On May 7th and on May 22nd, after two applicants, J. Selmer Law and Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, applied, we decided to go with Legal Aid as the approved applicant.
I wonder
So-
maybe if we could hear a little bit about the work. Is somebody from Legal Aid here?
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Greg Morita, he's the Deputy Director from Legal Aid, is here, and he can also provide more details.
That would be good to hear a little bit about it. And I know that we weren't getting very engaged in Tenant Remedies Acts, and one of the things we want to do here now is see if we can't do more to advocate for tenants. So maybe you could give us a little background on where we are now and what you hope to accomplish in the next year.
You bet. Thank you, Chair Gordon, council members. My name is Greg Morita. I'm the Deputy Director at Legal Aid in Minnesota Legal Aid. Before I launch into telling you about this, I want to acknowledge Luke Grunman, who is the managing attorney for our housing unit and really does the heavy lifting on a lot of this work and encourages other folks in his unit to do heavy lifting as well. What this grant does is, first of all, I want to thank the city for considering this, for putting this out for RFP. This is incredibly important work for the city right now, especially with the current state of the housing stock and the kind of housing need that we face. What this grant allows us to do, or will allow us to do, is dedicate resources to specifically look at bringing tenant remedies actions and rent escrow actions. Those are two types of lawsuits authorized by state law that allow tenants who are living in substandard conditions to bring the matter into the 4th Judicial District's Housing Court and ask a judge or a referee to look at the conditions they've been forced to live in by their landlord and ask the judge, 1, to order that those conditions be repaired, and 2, to compensate them for having to live in those conditions for the period of time before they've been fixed. That first, getting that judge to order that the landlord fix those conditions, that's one of the key pieces of the partnership between Legal Aid and the city here. We'll get those things fixed for the tenant, and we'll make sure that the tenant's needs and rights are met. But then the goal is to when the tenant moves on, that housing stock moves out in a decent condition for the next renter. And I really think that that is the key for this partnership. We can't have a cycle where landlords are allowed to develop a business model that allows them to bring in vulnerable tenants, tenants who may have had an eviction in the past, often not to their own fault, but just the filing of it, labeling them as a bad tenant. Bring them in, take their emergency assistance, put them in a substandard apartment, and then when they've made enough money off of that, ask them to leave. Give them a notice to leave so they can start the cycle again. You can, the other thing I want the council to understand is this rent escrow action, it's often talked about as a pro se action. It's often talked about as an action that somebody can bring without an attorney. And ideally, and when it was written up, that's what it was. But right now, what we have in the city are a lot of sophisticated landlords and landlords who come in as LLCs or other corporate entities, which is fine. But what they bring with them is an institutional knowledge of how things work over there. And what our clients don't have when they walk into that courtroom alone is any kind of experience of what's going to happen there, how fast it's going to happen, and what they need the judge to consider in order for the judge to do the two things we want them to do: order the place fixed up, compensate the tenant. We have excellent attorneys at Legal Aid. Luke's one of them. And these resources will allow us to focus on getting those tenants that kind of representation. It'll allow us to, even before we have to go into court, write the letter to the landlord demanding that the repairs are made, or pick up the phone and ask them why they're not. We'll settle a lot of these cases, and some of these cases will have to be decided by a judge. Under the terms of this arrangement, this grant, what we propose is that we'll be able to work on tenant remedies, rent escrow, repair situations for about 200 families over the course of the year. We'll do this in partnership with the Volunteer Lawyers Network, another high-functioning nonprofit here who really does amazing work trying to harness the power of the private bar to bring free legal time into this matter, free volunteer attorneys with our partnership and with our knowledge, we work with them to make sure that they can help leverage this grant. The other key measurement we want to see is that we'll actually increase the filings in the 4th Judicial District Housing Court for these rent escrow tenant remedies actions by 10%. This type of action, as I said, can be very effective. And right now, probably because of the fact that there aren't enough attorneys to represent tenants who could bring this, tenants don't bring them as often as they can. This grant will level the playing field a bit, and we'll be able to file more of those. It's incredibly good work. And I want to, before I end and take questions, I'm sure if there are any, I just want to leave you with an image that I got from Georgina Santos, one of our attorneys, who was doing one of these rent escrows a while ago. And she was doing it for an apartment building, and she was doing it for a group of tenants. All of the tenants spoke Spanish. And I wanted to go see Georgina at work, so I went down to the courthouse. And, when you're there, you got the attorney with their client sitting there. And so I was kind of thinking to myself, geez, I wonder if they have enough chairs. I wonder how this is going to look. And I walked in, and there was only one person sitting with Georgina. And I was puzzled about that. And then what I realized was the one person sitting by Georgina was an interpreter. And all of our clients, all of Georgina's clients, were in the first row, hooked up to simultaneous interpreting. And I just thought to myself, what a cool way to show the people of Minneapolis that justice can be theirs, and that they don't have to live in these kinds of conditions, and that there are people who care and can fix them for them. So that was a good day for those tenants, for Georgina, and for myself as well. So I want to thank you again. It's incredibly important work. I just want to thank you for considering this grant. I hope that you look at it favorably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think maybe we do have some questions. Councilmember Schrader.
Certainly, I actually want to touch on your last point about that justice can be theirs, because we heard a lot about outcomes, and I can't stress enough just what this means to the clients, not just the outcome and the justice, but to have somebody there that is looking out for them, the relief that's out there. This is when you're in a situation like this where you have not an ideal landlord situation, it feels like you don't have the power. And you talked about leveling the playing field. I think that's one part of it, but just to have that be part of your life is extremely powerful, and I'll be very supportive of this.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This isn't the first contract we've had with you, correct?
No, it isn't.
Okay,
It
this is
isn't.
just an extension of the work you've already been doing, correct?
This is Councilmember Goodman. It is not the first contract that you've had with legal aid. It is the first contract that focuses solidly on this type of relief to be brought to tenants. So it helps us in the sense that it will allow us to leverage what you've done before to expand into this realm.
I'm very supportive of this work. The question I have for you has to do with TRAs specifically. A lot of the conversation is focused around the need for additional resources going into tenant remedies actions, but I have been told multiple times that it's really the city that should be bringing these actions because we have higher standing in court in order to move them forward. Is that your understanding of the situation? I'm not saying legal aid shouldn't do them. I'm saying there should be more pressure on the city attorney's office to do them too, and I'm wondering what your thought is on that.
As I read those two laws, the rent escrow and the TRA, and focusing specifically on the TRA is a powerful way for non-tenants or tenants to partner with non-tenants such as a governmental entity in order to go into court as one case. So it's a perfect setup it's a perfect vehicle for a governmental entity to use to correct violations, usually in a multi-unit housing situation, usually where there's more than a few occupants. We can use it as well. Private attorneys can use it as well. Volunteers, legal aid can use it as well. But that is one of the key factors is that in most other lawsuits, you need to have all of the tenants being your clients. The TRA allows for kind of the standing of a non-tenant to step in and say, on behalf of the interests of whoever we are, the city, the tenant organizing, on behalf of them, we also want this place fixed up.
So, Mr. Chair, so does the city have stronger standing in court on tenant remedies actions than legal aid or the Volunteer Lawyers Network?
I apologize, Councilmember Goodman. I did not hear your question.
Does the city, should we determine to bring tenant remedies actions, have stronger standing in court than the Volunteer Lawyers Network or legal aid would have?
I think that when I think of trying to sort through whether you would have the city would have stronger standing or not, either any of the entities could bring them and they could be successful. I think what you would find with a governmental entity is the resources involved, the connections with the regulatory services, the kinds of direct pieces that already lay at your disposal would make these somewhat easier to bring.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I apologize again, Councilmember Goodman, but the other piece of it again to focus on is that they can be brought by the entities that you're talking about, the governmental entities, with less direct connection with the tenants. The tenants are not necessarily the clients in that situation, which can structure the lawsuit in a way that when we're representing tenants, we have different multiple interests at stake that aren't present when a municipality is doing it.
Mr. Chair, the reason I ask this question is I've been told by Homeline and various other advocacy organizations they would rather see the city bringing more tenant remedies actions than any other entity because our standing is stronger. And I'm just trying to get your sense of that. It sounds like you're saying not really, but kind of.
I'm saying, again, I apologize, Councilmember Goodman, but what I am saying is these actions are available for anyone to bring. When we bring them, we're going to bring them very, we're going to get what we need to out of them. The city could also bring them. I think that what maybe those folks are actually saying is, why not have a powerful sword like the city attorney's office also enter this arena and take on some of this work as well. Without commenting on that any further, I believe that's really the message that you're hearing, as opposed to they're much more effective in the hands of the city attorneys as opposed to anyone else. They're effective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to drill down to what is it that makes the city bringing them so much better? Kind of what I can understand from what you're saying is the city doesn't need to collect a list of clients. We can just simply come in if we see a number of inspections. Oh, and maybe Eric can answer, although they're not thrilled about doing them. I'm trying to get you to say yes, the city is better, so we can direct the city attorney to do it. You are not helping. And maybe that's because you want this contract, so I'm not actually sure really how to read this at all. But what I have heard multiple times in many meetings is the city should be doing this. The city attorney should be doing this. And I'm trying to figure out where this work should be. The city attorney saying, no, we don't want to. Legal aid saying, yes, give us a contract to do it. But I keep hearing from the advocates it's better for the city to bring it. So I'm not sure who has what the truth is. That's what I'm trying to figure out, but I'm not, unfortunately, able to do that because everybody else's self-interest is kind of at play here. Who is the best to do this?
Maybe I could just comment. I don't know that, so I've heard the same thing, but I don't know that somebody is saying it's better if the city does it than somebody else. What I'm hearing people say is the city should get engaged in this activity more. They would have the ability to bring Tenant Remedy Act. We also do have resources, and so there to do it. So that's what I'm hearing. And I think there has been a tendency on our part in the last decade or so not to get very involved in this. And now we're realizing, well, maybe we do have a role to play as a city and our city attorney's office. So we're willing to do that. And I suspect we could even do it in partnership with others and, on a recommendation. And so maybe someone else is carrying a case and they say, well, the city resources could really help here. And maybe we could coordinate, and hopefully that partnership's developing here. And Mr. Nielsen, if you want to respond, you can too. And I think.
Sure.
Ran up here.
I did. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Goodman, I'm out of breath. Yeah. I was watching the webcast downstairs and I thought, So yes, the city has the ability to file TRAs. We do. I think we were both here in the early 2000s, where we at one point we had filed for at least 2 years in a row, probably over 100 cases each year. Yeah. It is a tool of code enforcement that has distinct utility. I think it has utility in certain types of cases, but it's also one of the tools that we have in our toolbox, along with administrative citation, a very small amount of criminal prosecution to address housing maintenance issues. In terms of partnering, we've always been very clear that the city attorney's office in a tenant remedies action represents the city, represents our regulatory services office. The actions we file have to be based on outstanding documented orders issued by our inspectors. We do not represent the tenants in their individual capacity. We cannot, just as we cannot give private citizens legal advice. We represent the city, elected officials, boards, commissions, departments, and department staff. So we've always said that there's a dual role here where legal aid or tenant advocates can represent the tenants in their individual capacity, can advocate for tenant-specific relief, such as rent abatement and other things specifically affecting individualized tenant lease situations and rent situations. The city can advocate to address the repairs that our inspectors have identified, and there's a partnership that can be had there that we've always been willing to have. It's a conversation we're going to have about how to better formalize that. And if Noah Schuckman was here, maybe he is, I didn't even look to see he was here, but we are currently working on creating an enforcement protocol, a spectrum, that would allow the city to get upstream on some of these problem property type issues earlier so that they can be addressed on a parcel specific basis rather than sort of the portfolio basis that we found ourselves in. And TRA will be a valuable tool, at least in terms of identifying with this protocol that hopefully will be developed that will have specific specific scenarios where if a property is in this situation, we're going to send it down this enforcement path versus, the current situation admittedly is regulatory services enforces the vast majority of their housing issues through administrative citation. And there's a variety of reasons for that and a variety of reasons why it makes sense, but there is a very valuable role for TRA as well. And the city attorney's office has always been willing to do them, honestly.
Thank you very much. Council Member Bender has a question as well, or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get a bigger picture of, I appreciate you giving us the time to talk about this because I think it fits in very well with a lot of the work that basically every member of this committee is doing. And then some council members who aren't on this committee also working on things that affect renters, creating more legal protections for renters and more access to legal counsel. So I just wondered how this fits into the bigger picture of your work. I see that this is particular to the rent escrow and sort of housing quality question, but can you tell us, is the city currently funding legal representation for renters facing eviction filings?
The city provides in this arena right now a small CDBG contract that supports our generalized housing work. And when I say generalized housing work, what we're looking at is the most basic fundamental needs of low-income tenants in the city. So looking at one of those would certainly be evictions, where there is, it's an improper eviction. There's a viable defense that should be raised. Other areas are this type of work, our work with protecting violence against in the violence against women world. Supporting and maintaining the rights of tenants to their subsidized and public housing, access to those, and preventing the loss of that. So there is a small amount of money in that grant to do this. Again, that's a long-standing grant that is fairly diffuse across all of our priorities.
And then maybe, Mr. Chair, I can just make a comment that I just, Legal Aid is part of a group of organizations that have been working with the city in the city attorney's office and housing and regulatory services, and then a number of council members. I just want to say how much we appreciate that, because I think the experience that the organization brings to, and others bring to the day-to-day experience of a renter facing eviction, having a long-term housing quality or housing safety issue that's not been addressed by their landlord, that these are things that there are multiple ways where I think we can make it a lot better for tenants to have information that they need, to have the legal representation that they need, to have the rights that they need. And so I think we are trying to come up with a sort of holistic strategy that's working on lessening eviction filings in the first place, then getting people who are still facing filings the legal representation that they need to have a fair chance at defending their rights, and working with the county to improve access to their emergency housing funds, which I think are underspent in most years. And so I just think that we're looking at a package of changes that will help and be informed by the work that you've been doing with your clients. So I'm really supportive of this. I think it's basically the least we can do as the city to continue our work to support tenants.
Thank you, Councilmember Bender. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you as well for opening up that dialogue, for allowing those voices to be heard, for thinking creatively and strategically about the present situation and where creatively we can all go forward. So thank you to you. Thank you to the entire council for that conversation.
Councilmember Schrader.
Sure. Just wanted to address a little bit of the point about who should be bringing the TRAs. One thing I really like about the Tenant Remedies Act is it really focuses on the tenant. Where I think it falls a little bit short, and why I hope the city attorney's office is looking at, I'm very excited to hear that they're looking at a spectrum, is that, the tenant is made whole. At the end of the day, they've been paying rent every month. They had a contract, something they signed up for, and the landlord has been failing on that. And so they're made whole. I also think we need to be doing something the city attorney has been talking about, is just license revocations that we've seen in the extreme example. And I think that, making sure working in partnerships that we can kind of meet all the needs that are happening, and then take time to address the injustices on the much bigger front. I hope that the city's devoting resources to that.
Thank you, Council Member. And one thing I would just echo as well is it is true your regulatory services, your city attorney's office has a lot of tools in their toolbox. And one of the duties that we at Legal Aid have is to be watching as they're deployed to make sure that they're deployed in a way that harms the tenants the least. Sometimes they can be very heavy sticks that can hurt the tenants in trying to correct the landlord's the problems that a landlord needs to have corrected. So I appreciate that partnership.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Maybe I'll just ask if we approve this 1-year contract and then there's extensions that may happen for up to, I think, 4 additional years. Would you be willing to come back once a year and give us updates or help us engage as a committee in this kind of activity?
Absolutely. We would love to be able to do that.
All right.
Love to share the work that we're going to be able to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council members.
And I don't see any other discussion, so I'll move this. And this is moving the first 1-year basic service agreement to provide legal representation to low-income Minneapolis tenants having to do with needed repairs. And also authorizing an extension to that contract for a period of 4 1-year terms at the same rate, not to exceed $150,000 per year. And that's based on approved funding and performance satisfactory to city staff. So naturally, there'll have to be something in the budget for it, and then we're leaving it up to staff to come back. And I'm sure they'll inform us if they don't think we should renew those. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And we're ready to move on to item 15, which is a report back from the city attorney about the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority legal framework staff direction.
Chair
Welcome.
Gordon, members of the committee, I'm Nikki Newman with the City Attorney's Office. At the direction of this committee, I'm here to report on the legal framework of the relationship between the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority and the City of Minneapolis. Federal, state, and local laws define the relationship between the city and the MPHA, starting with the Housing Act of 1937, which was a New Deal program that created the original structure of the nation's public housing system, i.e. a federal assistance to local housing authorities chartered under state enabling laws who would build and operate public housing projects. 10 years after the Housing Act of 1937, the state of Minnesota adopted such enabling legislation in the face of a shortage of housing for veterans returning from World War II, as well as affordability problems and slum conditions. And the city of Minneapolis established the Minneapolis Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Over the next 35 years, the MHRA acquired Sumner Field Homes from the federal government, constructed Glendale townhomes and numerous high-rise public housing projects, followed by scattered site homes, and then added a Section 8 rental assistance program. In 1980, seeking increased efficiency and improved organization, the city obtained special legislation from the state that granted expanded development and redevelopment powers to the city, authorized the city to create a new agency or department by ordinance to exercise the additional powers, gave the city discretion to decide how to allocate the powers among the new agency or department and the existing entities, and specifically provided that the city may, by ordinance, impose limitations on the actions of the new agency. Of note, the 1980 special law specifically accepted public housing from the powers that could be directly exercised by the city. Pursuant to that 1980 special law, the city merged the MHRA with its Industrial Development Commission to form a new super agency called the Minneapolis Community Development Agency. In 1986, the city undertook a second reorganization to put public housing under its own umbrella, the MPHA, and moved all the other powers that had been exercised by the former MCDA to a separate entity. And then 4 years later, in 1990, the city completed the separation of the MPHA and the CDA into separate operating entities. The MPHA currently exists as a public body, corporate and politic, created by city ordinances pursuant to the 1980 special law for the purpose of accessing federal funds and implementing public housing programs. MPHA's powers are vested in a 9-member Board of Commissioners. Its powers are limited to public housing, which is defined in our ordinances as all housing owned by MPHA, all housing programs and projects currently being funded by HUD, Section 8 subsidized housing, housing projects as defined in state law, publicly owned housing development projects that are for elderly people, and other housing programs consented to by the city. The mayor and the city council retained appointment and removal authority over the Board of Commissioners and also retained some authority over the budget process and tax levy approvals. The 1980 special law also specifically addressed citizen participation. It said that the ordinance that creates the agency or department shall establish procedures for including citizen input when the agency or department establishes policies and programs. It also imposed specific standards on those citizen participation requirements. They're enumerated in my report. And presumably in response to the requirements in the 1980 special law, the city's ordinances creating the MPHA incorporated by reference the citizen participation plan that's attached to my report. That plan, however, appears to be quite outdated. So the council may want to consider updating the city MPHA ordinance, particularly as it pertains to citizen participation. Any such changes would have to be consistent with the requirements in the 1980 special law and in federal law. And MPHA has provided a memo entitled Resident Consultation Requirements that's also attached to my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and there are several representatives from MPHA that are also in the audience.
So I have a few questions. I noticed there are some things in the ordinance, and I'm not sure if they've been happening, like the quarterly reports. For example, I don't remember, at least in my time here, getting quarterly reports, which made me wonder if something in the ordinance is supposed to be happening and it isn't, what is the council's recourse? Sometimes we pass ordinance and something's a misdemeanor if it isn't complied with. I don't think that's the case here.
No, I don't.
So what if somebody's out of compliance with this ordinance? What do you think is appropriate?
Well, I don't think the ordinance provides any remedies, but my assumption is that because the city council has appointment and removal authority, et cetera, with respect to the governance of the MPHA, you might have some ability to make it happen.
And for the appointment and removal authority, that's over the Board of Commissioners, because I don't think it's over any staff, is it?
I think you have appointment and removal authority with respect to the Board of Commissioners, and then I believe you have confirmation authority with respect to the Executive Director.
And it sounds like the most important things for us to study are that 1980 special law, and then also our own ordinance. And so I've been trying to figure out what that 1980 special law really talks about, and I think it does give us the authority to put some limits on what. It also puts limits on what we can do when it comes to public housing.
Correct.
But can you talk a little bit more about what limits that we have the authority to put on the work of MPHA?
Well, I think that's more of a policy decision and a practical decision. As you indicated, the ordinance currently has some parameters, some limits that may or may not be being followed. I don't know. But I think that the city, within the parameters of the 1980 law, has the authority to impose limits that the city council thinks are necessary, desirable, effective.
And those would be through the ordinance, right?
Through the ordinance.
We can't do it in other ways. Would we have the authority if they came in with a 5-year plan to approve or not approve their plan?
Um,
This is kind of what started it, I believe. It wasn't a 5-year plan, but we came the staff direction grew out of a report that we got about their plan moving forward. And I want to,
I don't think it would be inappropriate in the ordinance, for example, to require, as is currently in the ordinance, there's some language about city council approval of authority over whether the MPHA can impose the HRI, the statutory HRI levy. There's approval authority over any aspect of the PHA budget that is city funded. There's informational report requirements. If the city by ordinance required that certain activities of the MPHA had to come before the council for action, I think that's the way you'd have to structure it, that by ordinance you would have to identify what things the city council has, a role in. And then we'd have to confirm that that wasn't crosswise with any federal requirements and or any state requirements.
right. So it seems like if, and I have to say that this has inspired me to think we should look at the ordinance again. And it's clear that this, and by the way, I commend you for actually finding that unified citizen participation plan. And I was impressed, and it's even online now, so we can all see it, because I couldn't find it when I first started looking for it. So clearly that's out of date, and we may not want to rely on that. I think going back to the 1980 law, it does lay out some things that are expected, and I think that's also good governance things that we would all expect. So that makes me think it's time to look at the ordinance a little bit more carefully as well. First, to look at it to see how we're doing, meeting with the expectations that was passed. So that ordinance was approved in 1980 as well, right? Or 82?
The original ordinance was in 1980, then in 1986, then in 1990, and then there have been a few additional amendments in the 2000s that didn't deal with governance, but dealt with the definition of public housing. Some expanded.
Okay. So just so people are clear that I'm giving you a heads up that probably I'm going to try to do subject introduction so we can look at the ordinance again. Obviously, it needs updating and some clarity. So that might give other opportunities for folks to think about what could be in there, what couldn't be in there. Could we theoretically change the number of commissioners through ordinance?
I believe so. I'd have to confirm with I know that the 1980 special law addressed changing the number of commissioners and had I think an extraordinary vote requirement to do that, but I do think it's contemplated in the 1980 special law.
Yes, obviously. Anything that we try to do with the ordinance, we'll have to check state law and federal law, so that's a good point as well. But that would be maybe something to look at. What's the makeup of that as well? It's still a little bit complicated and overwhelming, but you've really got us our leg up now, and I'm getting a much better handle on our relationship with MPHA and where we're going. Let's see if there's other questions. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will note that the CPED committee that I chaired in the past did get reports from the Public Housing Authority. We did hold public hearings on the appointees to the board. We did have the board members actually come in and meet with us in a committee in a public setting, just like is happening with our staff talking about this right now. We have had oversight over the choosing of their executive director. I served on a panel along with the private sector people, including Stephen Belton, Clayton Tyler, a resident of public housing, and others who were on the panel that chose the current director. And we were very lucky to get the current director. This is a multi-million-dollar organization with a multi-million-dollar financial problem. Should you be indicating that you want the city to help solve that problem, that will be at your peril. I think this is an extremely well-run organization, and the change in executive director solidified the fact that they understand the problems in front of them and that they are poised to try to deal with them. Ultimately, they get their money from the federal government, not us. So unless we plan to replace the millions and millions of dollars that they get currently from the federal government, and or we plan on stepping up and replacing the money that they're not getting that they need to operate, I would urge you to tread lightly. This is a very professional board of directors with specific expertise in various areas, and I'm sure Mr. Russ can tell you who is on the board currently, the efforts that are underway. There are MPHA residents on this board as well, I would note. It seems to me as a city, we have our own problems with affordable housing. To open up the door to taking on public housing's problem, I bet they would love that. And I'm sure Mr. Russ is laughing now, thinking, okay, you want more oversight? Feel free, step in and then help us with our financial problem too. We have our own issues. We already have our own underfunded organization operating in housing. I cannot imagine that we want to be telling professional people who are on their board that they're not doing a good job. And perhaps what you want to do is have some of the board members come in and talk to you. Carol Latofsky's on the board. Clayton Tyler's the chair of the board. Chuck Lutz is on the board. So these are people who know what they're doing in a housing realm. And I don't believe that opening up the ordinance does anything other than say you think there's something wrong with the way they're operating. So I'm not going to sit here and disparage the work that they've done, and I don't think you're doing that either. But by suggesting that this is something you want to introduce, you're suggesting that there's something that they're doing that's wrong, and I'd love to know what it is, and I'd love to have Mr. Russ get up and tell us what's going on. Certainly, if you'd prefer not to have a written report but an oral report, they're here today. They've probably been here more in the past 6 months than they had been in the past 16 years. They are working with us. I'll note that when we went to them and said we want to have the Section 8 anti-discrimination ordinance, it was public housing that stepped up to deal with the inspections issues. It was public housing that has stepped up to deal with the voucher issues that we need to make affordable housing projects go. So they have really stepped up almost more than the city has to try to help solve the affordable housing crisis outside their scattered site and project-based units. I would urge us to have a closer relationship with them in a productive way rather than kind of this veiled threat of we're going to look at the ordinance and see what we can do to change it. Because I don't think that you'll find that there is a lot that we want to step into that we can solve.
Well, I appreciate that, and I don't think that I'm necessarily trying to say anybody's doing a bad or a good job. I'm not trying to necessarily look backwards, although I will admit that I think I was operating under the assumption that there wasn't such a close-knit connection and there wasn't such good threads tying us together as the City Council and as the MPHA. In fact, I would say that it's our affordable housing problem. There isn't the city and MPHA problem. In fact, to solve the problem of affordable housing in Minneapolis, probably our best champion and one of our best avenues for that is public housing. So my intention is to strengthen the partnership, to clarify it. I actually think we could step up maybe with some revenue, and I'm supportive of seeing us allow them to use the levy authority. I think the way that it's written, MPHA comes to us and asks, and then we're the gatekeeper of whether or not it happens. So I'm trying to understand and get clarity around that as well. And certainly I think that and I know Kara and I know Clayton and I know Chuck, of course, and I do talk and meet all of them. And there may even be opportunities when they look at the ordinance to say, well, let's refine that. Let's do that better. And quarterly reports. Oh, that is a good idea. Maybe we should formalize it and make it clear. I do think that we follow the open appointments process for their board. I know that we've had hearings and they've come in and spoken. So I'm not trying to say that we've completely haven't done any of those. And of course, I was here when we voted for the new executive director. I think that was the second one that they've had. I'm not sure, but so I wasn't here for the first one. But anyway, I don't want this to feel like there's sides to this. I just want to be doing the best job that I possibly can. And I think it's really helpful if we kind of understand our framework a little bit better and where to go to look for it to understand what we're supposed to follow. So that's kind of my response. And we can keep talking. Councilmember Goodman.
I'm just wondering if you as chair have met with Mr. Russ, set up monthly meetings or bi-monthly meetings as the chair to go over what's going on. He's here today. Why don't you invite him up to say a few words about what's going on? I mean, he's been sitting here through this entire meeting.
Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Yeah, you can come up, and especially at the request. We don't necessarily have a monthly meeting, but we know each other, and I know that you would have been here last committee meeting too, but you're recovering now from surgery.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I have a brand new hip.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
So tip to be square, I guess, or something. But just a couple of thoughts. The public housing that we manage, the vouchers that we provide, they're embedded in the city. I mean, we're in the communities, we're in the neighborhoods. There are common purposes here. And I think defining what those common purposes are, I think is part of what my board has charged myself and our staff to do. And some of the items that Councilmember Goodman pointed out have been places where we really felt that we had to act in partnership with the city or support the city in some way. I think to the point of the public housing program itself, we do have significant backlog repair needs. And our approach to that has been to outline a series of steps. And I really want to be clear about this, that first goes to the federal source to see if there's ways that we can increase the funding that the feds might provide to us to give us more room to either operate or make repairs. We understand that we have a relationship with the levy, relationship, that's a potential. But our feeling was, look, we own and manage this property. It is subsidized fully by HUD and the appropriations we get from Congress. And we have an obligation before we talk to the community to talk to them and see what's possible there. And I would say to the council that some of what is required by federal law requires us to look at the properties a different way, requires us to consider how we protect the long-term affordability while moving the properties in ways that potentially could trigger more income for us. So that's our first step, is to look at the ability to raise the amount of income that we get for subsidy from the department. And if we're successful in doing that, the conversation we have with the city and partnerships about what comes next would be very different, because we would be operating with a different financial profile for many of our properties. So I would also welcome a chance to, we're here today, and we can plan on making a regular part of the meeting, or however you want to structure a conversation. We're certainly open to that. I will say one last thing: the rules that the federal government often imposes on us and the relationship we have are complicated. And we try to act inside of those and make real estate decisions that are in line with our mission. Our mission is not to sell off our properties. Our mission is not to displace people. Our mission is to invest in the property that we own and manage and create a new property or reinvigorate a property for the long term. To that extent, we'll be involved in detailed real estate transactions and options that we'll have in front of us. We'd be glad to talk about those. And we'd be glad to talk about other things that we're doing. Like in the past 6 months, we've project-based into many properties and developments all over town. Not a lot of units, but these are deeply affordable units. Right next door to us, we're going to be doing 10 to 15 deeply affordable units. All over the city, we've been project-basing vouchers so that nonprofit sponsors and others could have some units in the mix that reach well below 30% of AMI. And then there's other partnership potential I believe we have with the city that we certainly would be willing to talk about. So to that end, we could talk about what kind of structure we want to have that we would engage in, and we would welcome that conversation.
Well, and it sounds like you'd certainly be willing to formalize more of the quarterly report idea. I mean, part of what I want to do is look at what's in the ordinance now and say, let's make sure that we're implementing those.
Chair Gordon, I would point out that right now our annual plans and reports are online. If we want to distribute those in a different way to council or summarize those in different ways, We certainly think those two benchmarks might meet two of the quarterly reports, and then we do two others in some other fashion. So these are all things we could talk about.
And I don't know how formal they necessarily have to be. It probably depends on what kind of activity you're engaged in, but
Sure.
so there are reports and updates or something.
Right.
So we can discuss that.
And
look at
one
that
last
further.
comment, and any property changes we bring forward, any reinvestment we might want to do, just like any other landowner in a city that wants to invest in their property or make repairs or changes, we'd be obligated to go through the planning and zoning processes just like everyone else. So there's plenty of options to look at, oh, what are you doing at this site? Or what are you doing over there? And that would have to happen in a very public way and in accordance with the requirements that the city has for making those improvements.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And maybe this is a good time for you guys to review that 1980 special law too. I know that they've got, it clarifies whatever the MPH is doing is supposed to be consistent and conform with our adopted comprehensive plan. So that's kind of interesting in the fact that we're reviewing our comprehensive
yes,
plan.
We did send in comments on the plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And and there's a number of things in there. So, and certainly if there's any tweaks to the ordinance that I make, and the one thing that seems to be called out is this old participation plan that should be at least taken out, but there's industries will be in communication about that.
Okay,
So
we should, if you want to talk, just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if there's other questions from the committee?
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay.
But thank you for being here, and also thanks for your staff for
Sure,
coming as well.
and thank you all.
Yeah. And I think if your legal counsel thinks there's anything in the staff report that's missing or is lacking or anything, feel free to communicate and share that with us too. Because we want to make sure we kind of understand the parameters of that. This wasn't going to be a public hearing. I know that last time we had MPHA here, we had some community comment. We've got more information to cover as a courtesy to Councilmember Goodman. And because this is about MPHA, I let the director get up, but I apologize that if we don't have time to take more comments from the public, I know that there are people eager to talk, and we can certainly meet separately and find other times to have a public forum here to make sure that we're getting everybody's viewpoint. I think what I want to do is, unless there's further discussion, move to receive and file this report, and then move on to our last agenda item. All those then in favor of receiving and filing that report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. Then we have a report about an emergency stabilization pilot program that we're starting.
Chair Gordon, members of the committee, I'm presenting today about a series of actions that authorize an emergency stabilization pilot program and the use of $2 million to fund the program. Currently, there is a shortage of 2 or more bedroom units of rental housing in the city of Minneapolis. As of the fourth quarter of 2017, there was an average 2% vacancy rate for 2 or more bedroom rental units throughout the city. Within this already tight market, there is also an increase in the number of households that have an immediate need for rental housing due to recent rental license revocation and condemnation cases that are resulting in tenant displacement within our city. Currently, a large portfolio of homes impacted by a rental license revocation must move by August 31st, which is one of the reasons for the urgency of this program. To combat these trends, staff propose an emergency stabilization pilot program to mitigate the imminent displacement of households renting from a landlord whose license was revoked or building condemned. The program seeks to serve households with an income below 60% of area median income, which is currently $56,580 for a family of 4, by purchasing up to 12 units of housing that would be available for lease. Rental rates would not exceed 60% of fair market rent for the number of bedroom unit. Homes that are being analyzed for acquisition are all currently vacant. Up to 5 homes may be acquired through Hennepin County's tax forfeit land division. Remaining homes may be acquired from developers that recently rehabilitated a home through the Minneapolis Homes Rehab Program, which sells city-owned vacant buildings for the purpose of rehabilitation and reoccupancy without a development subsidy, or other move-in ready rental property that is currently vacant. All homes acquired for the program are intended to be sold for homeownership upon the conclusion of the 5-year pilot. The city proposes contracting with Urban Homeworks to act as the program administrator for a 3-year term and a contract amount not to exceed $100,000. In December of 2017, Urban Homeworks was appointed as the rental manager for a large portfolio of homes whose landlord's rental license was revoked. Due to this role, Urban Homeworks has unique knowledge of households most likely to benefit from this program. However, this program is not restricted to certain tenants and is available citywide. The Permanent Review Committee completed their review of the contracting request with Urban Homeworks described in this RCA and approved it. The city has identified $500,000 in development account that was approved in the 2018 budget for a lease-to-own program and $1,500,000 of CDBG funds, the majority of which is program income, for a total of $2 million to fund the acquisition, closing costs, management, and related expense of this program. Neighborhood notification was provided to the neighborhoods where potential properties for acquisition are located. Comments received have been distributed to the committee. Key themes from the comments received included support for preventing imminent displacement of families, support for serving all tenants at risk of displacement, support for placing households in a multifamily building or reaching out to existing landlords to place families, support for financial counseling, home maintenance courses, and ownership counseling to help households transition to ownership, concerns about tenant capacity to maintain the home, concerns about transparently communicating program selection criteria to potential tenants, concerns about concentrating poverty, particularly within North Minneapolis, and concerns about impact on homeowners' sale prices or availability of homes for potential homeowners. Staff noted the responses received and have made program adjustments. The pilot program is intended to inform future tenant stabilization activities. The program will be evaluated based on its cost effectiveness as a rental strategy and its success in stabilizing tenants in sustainable rental or homeownership upon the conclusion of the program, particularly due to a portion of the funds being from a lease-to-own program. Outreach has occurred to both large portfolio and small portfolio landlords in the city of Minneapolis, and financial incentives are being provided by non-city sources for many households impacted by rental license revocation. Despite these efforts, the need for housing units has not been met. Staff are currently in discussion with Urban Homeworks about connecting tenants to counseling and other supportive services and plan to post selection criteria for the program and available units publicly on the City of Minneapolis website. Staff do not believe that this program concentrates poverty, as the 12 units of housing are scattered throughout North Minneapolis. Income limits of the program exceed the average income currently present in the community served, which is $34,440 in the Near North neighborhood and $45,663 in the Camden community. And it is anticipated that a majority of program beneficiaries are likely current residents of North Minneapolis that have expressed an interest in remaining in their current community. Upon the conclusion of the program, all units will be sold for homeownership. Staff believe producing additional units of 2 or more bedroom housing in an exceptionally tight rental market is the best method for stabilizing families currently at risk of displacement due to rental license revocation or condemnation of their landlord's housing units. I can take questions at this time.
Councilmember Ellison.
First, I wanted to thank you for the presentation and for the hard work in putting this together. Just wanted to say a little bit about this program. You know, when I got elected, I inherited a pretty messed up situation with a license revocation and a slumlord that owned quite a bit of property in North Minneapolis. And I think that what really stuck out to me as in my months in office and dealing with that situation is, first off, while I was of course upset to see that this situation was occurring, I knew that it was the exact type of situation that I myself ran to try to remedy and find unique solutions towards. And the next thing that really hit me in dealing with the situation was the resilience of the tenants and the courage of the tenants to stick their neck out and to fight for the kind of treatment that they deserve. And as we sort of wind down to this particular incident happening in North Minneapolis, although I know that we have license revocations happening in other parts of the city as well, it dawned on me that, we as a city need to be working hard to make sure that our tenants, especially when they stick their neck out and show courage and bravery, are having options in the face of displacement. And so I think that this is a really unique program. I think it's needed. I'd of course be excited to see it go well beyond a pilot, but I'm excited to see this pilot serving the limited people that it will serve. So just wanted to name that.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that Councilmember Reich, Schrader, and I discussed in our smaller meeting with you was whether or not we would be able to set up escrow accounts for people who are living in this housing so that should they not have rental assistance going forward, which they likely won't, there would be a pool of money that would have been saved that they could use to offset rising rents, and or ideally that they could use for a down payment on this house or another. This is not any brilliant idea by me. This is basically what happens in a lot of supportive housing projects where part of the rent is escrowed and used for future ability to purchase. I noticed this was not mentioned in your report, so it sounds like you're not suggesting that.
If it's the will of the committee for us to pursue that option, I think that's something that we're open to. We did not have sufficient time to fully research that option prior to our presentation today.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll be interested in what council members Reich and Schrader have to say, but personally, I think that this is a model that works, where we are able to assist tenants not only in developing rental history, but being able to save enough money to make a down payment on a house going forward. I'm worried about what will happen after the rental assistance period ends and the rent goes up, maybe not as much as they're paying now, but it goes up, and then people have spent that money on other things, and then they can't pay rent, and then they'll be evicted from the houses that we put them in. And I can only see that going awry. And so I really think it's important for us to do what we're now becoming landlords. So we should be doing what many other supportive housing organizations do. This is just simply taking money that they would have used to pay us. Mm-hmm. It's not asking them to put in new money. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be clear. I'll repeat that one more time. We're not asking them to spend $1,000 and then escrow another $500. I'm suggesting we escrow some of the money that they're paying so that we can save it. And so, again, I'll defer to Councilmember Schrader and Reich, but I thought we were moving forward on this. It's one of the things for me that I don't know that I would support it without it. So this is a $2 million fix for 10 families, folks. We picked out 10 and said, we're going to do $2 million for you when there are 1,500 people in the Friends properties that are going to need help. The least we could do is make sure that they are prepared to be able to afford these houses in year 2 through 5, and or more importantly, be able to develop a good enough rental history that they potentially can get a mortgage and use some of this money as a down payment. If we're going to do something right by these 10 families, then let's actually do it. Instead of just spend $2 million on 10 families when I have, I don't know, 1,000 people in my ward and 5 Steve Friends properties who are going to get nothing. So I hope we consider doing it right.
Councilmember Schrader.
Yeah, I share Councilmember Goodman's concern, though I'm very supportive of this. I think they really want to focus on just the issue of what happens in year 2. I think that's very forward thinking to look at, these families that have been in a bad situation, what's their next year going to look like, but just making sure that we're setting up for success, that we aren't having a lower rent at the expense of increasing rents for the year 2 through 5, just making sure that it's something that's going to fit in their budget and that's going to something to eventually put them on firmer ground.
Councilmember Cunningham has joined us. Welcome, and you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members, for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to take a moment to speak to this and thank Councilmember Ellison's leadership and the staff for working on this. The homes that are being proposed are disproportionately actually in my ward, in the 4th ward, and I'm really excited for us to be able to have this opportunity for folks. What I learned while I was out door knocking and really building community, I heard very loud and clear that my ward is frequently folks' last stop before homelessness. And it's usually and then what we're just seeing is that the folks, this is the last stop before homelessness. And then as vulnerable renters, have a hard time getting back into it. And really in the 4th ward, the foreclosure crisis and the 2011 tornado, both of those really destabilized our housing stock in the 4th ward, which has had significant consequences, which has been folks losing family wealth, destabilizing where folks are able to live. So I know that this is citywide, but I do think it's important for there to be a north side focus as well if possible, because we want to be able to keep folks in their communities. And then I think that this program really has the opportunity to reverse some of this harm that's been done on a smaller scale. And I've talked to Councilmember Ellison about some of the ways that we can help to achieve that, such as with working in partnership with NAS to be able to provide wraparound services, or looking at the rent to own. I feel very, very strongly that I would like to know that the folks who are being brought in have the solid opportunity to be able to become homeowners, be set up to succeed. And I think currently as it is with just financial literacy coaching, that doesn't go quite deep enough for us to actually break intergenerational cycles of poverty and inaccessibility to homeownership. So I also really love Councilmember Goodman's idea around that. That really helps set up folks to succeed. So thank you to everybody who's been working hard on this, and I'm really grateful that it will be very visible in my ward.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just echo the sentiment. Not only does the committee seem to want this idea to move forward, it strongly does. I think it's a very, very important tool, so we appreciate staff's continued work on it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Getting to this point has taken a ton of work, and there are many thank yous to go around. I was not here in the meeting to hear Councilmember Goodman's proposal regarding escrow, so I guess I can't comment to that, but I would love to talk to you about it. What I will say is over the last 6 months, my office, in conjunction with Councilmember Ellison's office, have been working pretty extensively to find a solution which will protect these renters and ultimately ensure that a situation like this does not happen again. And it's a difficult position to be in because you want to help the tenants that have been harmed and in many cases have been living in unhabitable conditions for many years, while not providing undue benefit or some sort of windfall to the landlord who has been mistreating them for the entire time. In collaboration with Reg Services and the city attorney's office, we are being more aggressive here in the use of tenant remedy actions, where the city steps into the shoes of the tenant, where previously they were facing the landlord on their own. But that is a solution moving forward. In the case of the con-tenants and others, we're going to need to act more swiftly and creatively. And yes, as Councilmember Goodman stated, this is in some cases unprecedented in using this emergency fund. While it is a couple $1 million to help a relatively small portion of people, I will note, however, that we do gain additional. I mean, it's an investment where we are actually gaining something as well as a city in the form of these properties. So it's not like we don't get anything in return in addition to helping the tenants the city actually owns as well. Big credit here goes to CPED, to David Frank, to Housing Director Andrea Brennan, has been incredible, to Elfric, who stepped in and thought outside the box to help create this program. All of you, thank you. Thanks to their hard work and their dedication, con-tenants and other renters and similarly situated and dire situations can ultimately find relief. It's truly a testament to really the amazing talent that we have in the city. This has not been done before like this. Also want to give a huge thank you to Councilmember Ellison, who has invested an incredible amount of time and energy working through the issue and coming up with some solutions that work for residents of his ward. Also, I want to thank Peter Ebden, who, from my staff, who probably doesn't get enough credit, but he works tirelessly and has been on this particular topic. Finally, just a thank you to our partners at Hennepin County and Urban Homeworks, who were really integral in pulling this program together. Thank you. This has been difficult, and I'm sure we're going to find ways to improve upon this in the future, but I think it's a good step. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ellison.
I don't want to take up too much of the committee's time, but I do know that we have a handful of folks who have actually experienced revocation, and because the situation in the room, and because the situation is so specific to the circumstances that they're facing, and we also have someone from Urban Homeworks here. I just was interested in seeing if we could give a few minutes to allow folks to say a word.
I guess that's all right now. I'll feel even worse to my friends from Glendale, but yeah, certainly maybe two people or somebody could get up and speak for a couple minutes.
Hi, I'm Takara Eiler. I am a community organizer. I'm also work for Legal Aid. I'm the tenant outreach coordinator, and I'm also a Mahmoud Khan tenant. I appreciate CPAP's effort of what they're trying to do. I support their effort as long as they're supporting us in what we're trying to do. We have been having really difficulty trying to find other housing for the people in the portfolio due to them having fixed incomes, things that have happened in their background, the unlawful detainers that Mahmoud has given us, just numerous of barriers. And I see with this, opportunity opening up that a lot of those barriers will get pushed away, and that we will be able to at least place some of the families in safe and affordable housing and stuff like that. So this has not been easy. I've been organizing for over 1.5 years with Inquilinos. I have seen a lot of people in the portfolio get sick out of the properties that Mahmoud Khan has. I've seen a lot of families go through stress to the point where they're ending up in hospitals. People's kids are sick. I mean, it's just the things that we've been going through is just it's not been fair to us. I advocate for myself. I advocate for the tenants that are in this portfolio, and I advocate for other tenants that are not in this particular portfolio that are being displaced immediately August 31st. So with that being said, I hope you guys do approve this, and it'll make it a lot easier for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there somebody else? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chad Schwitters with Urban Homeworks, and I would just like to congratulate and thank the city for stepping up and creating some solution to this challenge. As we've gone through this process over the last 7 or 8 months, finding alternative housing has been just incredibly difficult. And so even though this isn't going to solve all of the challenges that residents are facing, it'll at least have some impact for some. And I think it's worth taking a crack at it. So not only do I think about this as a little bit of a pilot program, but maybe a little bit of a protest, that maybe we can send a message that there is a deep, deep need and that we can get more creative and do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm confused if we're going to have a staff direction or some kind of amendment here based on anybody's view. Or, Councilmember Ellison, do you want to move this forward?
It'd be great to get maybe a little bit of help from the clerk. I think Councilmember Goodman has a really good suggestion. I want to move this forward now, but I also would love to figure out how we could create some wiggle room for us to for staff to take some time to consider Councilmember Goodman's proposal. Is that possible?
So we have wiggle room between now and the council meeting.
Okay.
So we could move it forward with recommendation.
Okay.
And still have time to work on an amendment to bring forward at the council meeting, or we can move it forward without recommendation.
Okay.
And still have room. But,
Then I'd like to, thank you, Mr. Chair. Then, I would like to move this item forward for approval, and we can kind of sort that out between now and the next regular meeting.
I think that sounds like a good option. Any comments on that? Councilmember Bender and Councilmember Goodman's card is up too. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief, but I think today's meeting has highlighted a lot of things that folks are working on, and I just want to point out a couple of things. One is that so many of our renters in North Minneapolis are in single-family homes or small, like duplex units. If you include duplexes and triplexes, it's 95% of the renters in the North Side, and so I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers who've been working so hard to bring forward the voices of renters. I think there are lots of challenges of organizing in a multifamily building, but when you're talking with people who are just in one home over and over and over again, we know that there are a lot of barriers to organizing in that, and that we need to be intentional as a city about giving about not treating all renters equally across the city or the same, and understanding what's our strategy for neighborhoods where lots of renters are in single family homes, and there may be a different way of organizing and of giving power to those renters than renters in a multifamily building. I'm really supportive of this. I love the idea of adding in the assistance that Councilmember Goodman described, and I think in order for this to be successful, it really sounds like an important option. So I just want to say that so we just know how there's a lot of support for that. And I think, over time, hopefully we won't need to do this. I think the other piece that we highlighted earlier in this committee meeting was that we're trying to take a different approach to landlords like this so that we're not getting to the very end here and have thousands of people or hundreds of people displaced all at once because we've gotten to the, through years and years of problems, and then we're at a license revocation. And so hopefully we're doing a building by building tenant remedy action or other earlier interventions so that people are not living in unsafe, unhealthy housing for years and then facing eviction because we've gotten to the end point of license removal. So we're working on like every single step of that process, making it easier for folks who have stuff on their records to get into housing, to stabilizing housing, to making sure that we have enough inspection capacity to inspect homes so that people are in safe and healthy homes. And I think all of it really needs us to acknowledge the work that tenants are doing and those who are organizing tenants to bring voice to people who are unfairly disadvantaged in every single step of the process today. And we need to change that. So thank you for everything that you have done. I think there's a lot of folks to thank if you want to do that too. And just want to say that I think, this is an emergency intervention into something that we should try to make sure doesn't happen again in the future.
Councilmember Ellison.
Last thing, in the mayor's thank yous, I think I think you left out Roxanne Kimball. I wanted to thank you, Roxanne. You showed incredible diligence on this, and I really appreciate the work. So thank you.
All right, then, seeing no other comments then on Councilmember Ellison's motion to authorize creation of the program and appropriating the funds and the contract with Urban Homeworks, as well as some authorizing flexibility for staff to modify the program as needed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And then I believe that's our last item, and we have concluded the committee's business, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.